Hey folks, welcome back to another Poem Master video, and as usual at the end of the months, right, we'd go over the units this month and then, sort of see where they rank overall in the meta at the moment, right? And again, Death is not exactly out yet, and I would wish that I would wait until she's out, but I'm also slightly worried by the time that she's out, we get more Datamined info, plus, she's a striker, and there really isn't like that much to really use. I mean, pretty straightforward. You could see the numbers. It's nothing too special, right? I was more so waiting again for like Hydreigon, and Hilbert to come out and sort of try them out first, before having like a very very strong opinion on these. Well, I don't really have a strong opinion on a lot of these, but anyways, yeah, let's get into this then. So again, shout out to the folks who to help work these out, right? Again, just not me. You got like what 7-8 people who I do respect a decent amount in terms of their takes, right, on these. And yeah, let's talk about them then, I guess. So again, when we're ranking these, we're looking them at their best situation, right? At yeah, the best, right? I'll at say 20 out of 20, 5 out of 5 if they have an EX, they are EX, right? If they don't have EX, then tough luck. So let's go over these then. So as usual, we'll just throw in one on each tier to just start this off, so we get a good idea of which each tiers are. For the first one, we can start off with Singsu Red, right? He's still good. Right? Like, a lot of people think, oh well, he's bad now because Leon's at the game. No, Leon could, be very, very good, and he could still be fine, right? He doesn't diminish it, doesn't diminish him that much, right? But anyways, yeah, he's still very, very good. Solid damage, especially really, really good damage in Sun, right? And there's nothing much else to talk about. He's just, I mean, there really isn't much to talk about like most of these strikers. They're all, I mean, they're all damage dealers. I mean, well, 90% of them are damage. There are a few who aren't damage dealers, but yeah, nothing. They're just not as interesting as like techs or supports, right? When talking about them. Anyways, moving on. For the like close top tier, we could put something like a I don't know. Would be a good example. Dragonite. Dragonite's a good one, right? Incredible damage, right? Absolutely bonkers damage. Has potions, which is nice, right? Gauge heavy, which is true, right? One of its downsides is gauge heavy, but outside of that, not much. A lot of people say, oh, he needs a lot of supports. Not really. He doesn't really need that many. He just needs like he could. Like one support could like cover all his like support needs, right? Just run like a Sabrina and then like you're set with supports. You don't need that many supports. So people always say like, oh, he uses a billion. No, he doesn't need that many supports. One support is more than enough for him, right? Anyways, so that moving on. To the very good tier. I'd say something like a Houndoom would be very fitting for that. Very, very great damage, although it did kind of fall off due to the fact that it's not like extremely good in dual striker comps, which unfortunately does overall like the team's damage output, but its individual damage output is still really, really nice, right? So yeah, anyways, moving on, good, let's see, who could be, I guess the Haxorus, we could put Haxorus in like the good tier. Haxorus is still very, very good in Battle Villa, right? Outside of that, I mean, the damage is slightly mediocre. I mean, it's not terrible. It's definitely not terrible, but like compared to like all the other like dragon type damage, not nowhere as good. Unfortunately. The gimmick is really, really nice, right? With Carry On and all that stuff. So Haxorus is cool. Moving on. Next year called Solid Replacements or Decent. I only put in the or decent there because of the lack of elite ghost type strikers, and like even the best ones aren't that great, so I had to put that one in there. But yeah, and in terms of like this tier, right? Again, as we mentioned, the ghost type strikers, obviously, unfortunately, they're not anything amazing. Miss Magus has some solid multipliers, but the overall damage output is not that great. Driftbloom is just doesn't have anything that great going for him. Right? Terrible damage output. Has the downside of the 2 turn for 1 sync move countdown with Phantom Force. Does have a good sync nuke, but again, is it really worth it? Right? So there's that. Moving on. Actually, not moving on. Let's put another one for this tier in terms of like example, because these are like the decent ones, not the solid replacement ones. Solid replacement, it's something like, I don't know, Price, right? If you don't have Pheromosa, then Dugong's a decent ice type striker replacement, right? Obviously not as good or as flexible as Pheromosa, but it's still solid, right? Icy Wind's nice. Get the extra speed debuffs is cool, right? If you could get the freeze synergy up, obviously bonkers damage, but also again very, very unreliable and unsustainable, right? Moving on to the iffy replacement levels, I'd say something like a Infernape, right? Infernape actually has like some solid damage. It's just not like defensively it's not that great, and even like the solid damage isn't like too crazy either. So Infernape, I guess. Moving on, going into the tier of the better gridless strikers, something like a Rayquaza. It's one of the better gridless strikers. Run it under weather. It does have that extra, weather boost, which is nice, decent multiplier. But definitely would appreciate a grid sometime in the future, as all the gridless strikers would, right? And then the last year, the worst gridless strikers, something like a Norman, probably the weakest striker in the game overall. Normal types just are not great, unfortunately, in this game if you're trying to do damage, because you don't have the 2 times, multiplier, right? And then most of the times the BP increase doesn't really make up for it, sadly. And then Norm is even worse because he also has recoil, which is not great without it. There are recoil moves that are like fine, right? I mean, Elisa or Hilda's recoil kit is completely fine, but like Norman's is not. It's only Standfast 3 or something. It's just something. It's not great, right? Anyways, all right, now let's just keep going from left to right. Over here. So let's see. Let me just mix these up so they're not in like order or anything. Yeah, moving on. Gyarados, I probably put it in close comp. I mean, it's the hardest hitting flying type unit in the game at the moment. Even more than Blue, which is really impressive because Blue hits pretty hard and Gyarados hits even harder. Which is obviously why it deserves a spot up here. Bounce is bad. No one cares about bounce, but obviously the Hyper Beam damage is Hyper Beam damage, which is a lot, right? Moving on, Lycanroc, probably in the very good tier. The damage is lacking in comparison to any of the other top tier units. Lycanroc could honestly even go 1 tier lower, but the combination of things makes it a still solid, right? Self-speed buffs are nice, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely lacking and could definitely drop further if it doesn't get any better circumstances in the future. All right. Anyways, moving on. Alolan Sandslash. We dropped this one a bit. I mean, it's still fantastic, right? Obviously, Hail on Sync is great. I personally don't agree with dropping Alolan Sandslash, but again, not my call. But yeah, the damage isn't the greatest. I still like his team a lot, but its team is slightly restricted. But it's a really, really great team, right? Even though it is restricted, it's a very, very nice team. Obviously with Pheromosa and Delibird. But if it does get like some, another like ice type Pokefair level, partner in the future. That would be really, really nice. That actually has like the biggest thing with pheromones, in my opinion, is that it doesn't have snow shelter, which kind of sucks. Again, I've never personally found it to be an issue, right? But it would be nice if we just get another dedicated ice type striker, a more dedicated ice type striker in the future. But anyways, moving on. Clawitzer is not very great. I mean, it has a really, really nice kit. I like its kit. It's just like solid 2-gauge moves, not that great. What can you do, right? Leon is the new one over here, and definitely going in the top tier. I mean, it's probably the strongest striker at the moment. By a mile, like a lot, right? It does the most damage in the game on the regular move outside of like Wallace's Mirror Coat. But yeah, obviously I think he hit like 1 million damage on Inferno, which is like no one's even really close. Obviously it has a whole team buff with damage reduction, which is fantastic, and damage buffs as well. You got 100% burn on Inferno, right? You got type coverage with Hurricane, type coverage with Earthquake, this and that. Just overall fantastic unit. Plus it's fire type, so you get the benefit of sun and all that. Really, really great if you run it with Lyra. I don't know, it's really good. Moving on, Zacian probably put it in the B tier. Fantastic secondary striker that you put on the team. One slight downside is the damage doesn't get any good until the opponent sinks, which is not fun, unless you like give the opponent like sync move countdown parameters, which is actually fine in my opinion. You can do that for Gloria, right? But it does take a while to do like the really, really great damage. But regardless, again, fantastic secondary striker, really, really good speed, all the move gauge refreshes, all that stuff. Moving on, Barry. Barry probably, I don't know, a good tier maybe. Barry just got like kind of destroyed by May, unfortunately, because there really isn't much point in running Barry anymore. Like you can, but it's just not optimal. Barry's just not on like an optimal rain team, unfortunately, right? Because the big thing about Barry is it has a really, really great sync nuke, but like May's just like kind of blows it out of the water. And if you're not nuking with Barry, your bubble beam damage is just not that great, unfortunately. But again, for any suboptimal builds, suboptimal team rain comps, you could still run Barry, which is really, really nice, right? It also has a full heal, which is cool. Anyways, moving on. Typhlosion, we probably put in the very good category, especially now with Lyra seeing more use. You definitely run also with Barry, not like the most optimal team, but you could definitely run say like Typhlosion with Leon, dual striker with Lyra, right? Or Typhlosion with whatever else. Dual striker comp with Lyra, which is really, really nice. Again, fantastic speed, which is the reason why you could do that in the first place. And really, really good damage on Eruption, obviously. Moving on, we got Hilda over here. I'm not that hot on Hilda right now. But it's still okay, I guess. Right, the potions are nice. If it weren't for the potions, I'd probably be off board, probably move Hilda a bit lower. But again, the potions are nice. Sync nuke's honestly not. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's also not like anything amazing nowadays. Plus, she doesn't have any EX, so like, right. Anyways, moving on, Pheromosa, probably in the very good territory as well. A lot of people disrespect Pheromosa a lot, which is slightly annoying for me personally. Again, a bit of a harder unit to use, but you do have a lot of flexibility, right? Actually, very, very flexible. Don't really need to run offensive supports, really, especially, with the Blizzard taking out the sides. Which again, sides usually not very, very tanky. Finish them off. get some easy buffs so you could run some defense and supports on your team to make it obviously work better. All that stuff. Also, still the best unit to run on a Ice Steven team, right? So there's that as well. Incredibly fast, fantastic secondary striker. Lunge could debuff the opponent's attack if you want. With all the new units that need like physical attack debuffing, that's also something, I guess. Garchomp, again, unfortunately last time we moved it down and we honestly don't see it coming back up anytime soon unless we get like some fantastic Sandblaster unit. But yeah, the damage is still nice. It's just not, again, anything like crazy to justify keeping it in the top tier in comparison to like a lot of the close to top tiers. The team comp is slightly restrictive, right? And Garchomp lacks a legit second option, which is kind of sad. And honestly, if you do get like a good second option, like you still have to be tanking with Garchomp, which is not great. So like Garchomp lacks like a better sand setter and a better second option, which is kind of sad. Anyways, moving on, we got Yveltal. Yveltal's okay, right? Close to top. Obviously, the damage is not good for a striker, but it does some fun stuff. Obviously, the aggravation on Dark Pulse is nice. The heals are nice. HP 5 is okay. Keep it alive most of the time. Recuperation, all that stuff. It has a really, really fun kit. It just doesn't work together extremely well. It would have been so much better if it was like all its moves were the same type, because like this thing doesn't need type coverage. It needs more like damage consistency. Again, being a very low damaging 4-gauge move striker, right? Anyways, moving on. Ho is still really nice, right? We could probably put it in the good category. Obviously, Sun on Sync, great secondary striker. Overheat's damage is still really good, right? 50% chance to burn with Sacred Fire is nice. 2-gauge, grass type with Solar Beam. And now that it actually has access to 5 out of 2020, obviously that's very nice as well. Moving on, Reuniclus. Probably solid replacements for decent. Obviously, you don't really want to run Reuniclus on the optimal psychic type team. It is an option, but again, same thing with like Barry, Typhlosion, Hilda. They're okay-ish options, but they're not the most like optimal teams. I don't know. It does good damage. Could take some hits. Not have much else to say. Moving on, we got Guzma, which we could put in solid replacement / decent. It's just like a worse Pheromosa. It's obviously its role as a secondary striker, except there's just so many better secondary strikers right now that like it's just like stuff like Gloria, Pheromosa, all like these are just so much better options than Guzma, unfortunately. Good defenses, still nice, right? Moving on to Cannon. Cannon probably put it in the worst Gridless Strikers. Beak Blast is a terrible move. Peck is also not good. Does decent damage on the sync move, and that's about it. Gardevoir, again, haven't come out yet. But again, the kit is pretty decent. Second best fairy striker in the game. Oh, well, not striker. Well, best fairy striker, technically striker, but damage dealer, right? In terms of like raw damage power, it does have the highest, right? In terms of overall unit, Whimsicott is definitely better. But Gardevoir also still really good. The +1 gauge thing is slightly annoying, but it does give you a lot of damage, which could potentially be worth it. Yeah, a really great fit between beside Palatine Serena, obviously both of them outputting massive damage, and then you got like a fantastic sync nuke with Palatine Serena, right? Or that with the Sabrina or whatever, and then you're set. Fantastic team. Moving on, Avalog is not good. Gallade, probably close to top, right? Very, very good kit. Fantastic damage on Focus Blast, obviously. All the speed stuff is really nice. Crit stuff, right? Very sustainable as well if you're trying to run him at like Balvilla or something. Moving on, Mighty Nina we promoted to the top tier. It's hard not to, honestly. Its kit is just so powerful. Obviously, the downside is it doesn't do that much damage. But the rest of its kit's just fantastic. Spearon's so good for running dual strikers. Then Crunch on roll, right, with insult or injury. Could also help if you're running with another dark type physical. Running more Pekko and Mighty Nina is just so incredibly powerful and busted, right? Obviously also has carry on as well, right? Moving on, Leavanny probably put in the good tier. Very, very fast speed. I think Leavanny is very, very underrated, but doesn't do that much damage outside of Sun, but it's still okay, right? Definitely run it in a lot of dual striker situations as well. Next one, Salzal probably, Salzal, we could put in this tier, I guess. It's solid as a damage dealer, decent damage on the Sync Nuke, bad damage on Sludge Wave. Also interesting tech unit with Smog on top of Flinch, but otherwise nothing, again, too special. Roserade probably put in the iffy replacement level. It's basically, Roserade is basically a gridless Sceptile, which is pretty nice, right? Gridless, lucky skillless Sceptile, right? They do almost the same amount of damage. Sceptile is faster though, which is nice. But outside of that, yeah, it's a gridless Sceptile basically. Moving on. Pidgeot would probably put in the close top tier. Really nice damage. Hard to achieve the max damage, but if you do, it's really nice. Defenses are good. Speed is good, obviously. So there's that. Sceptile probably still put here as well. The damage is obviously very, very good with the multipliers that it has. Great speed, right? Don't really have anything too negative about Sceptile. Nate, we could probably put in the solid replacements or decent tier. Okay-ish Sync Nuker. Aerialist doesn't do that much damage. Fly is useless. I mean, Aerialist damage is like okay. It's kind of like I don't know. It's like a flying type Guzma, basically, is what Nate is. Moving on, we got Kingdra. I don't know. Maybe iffy replacement level. It's very, very good if you maximize Kingdra's damage potential, but the issue is maximizing it, which is really, really hard, right? The team comp is very, very restrictive, and you basically cannot run Kingdra in dual striker comps. Just because, well, I mean you can, but the damage drop off is so much for Kingdra, it's just not worth it. I used to have Kingdra as it's better than Haxorus, but now as time has gone on, Haxorus does, with all the new units that's added, how team comps have been shifting, Haxorus is definitely better at this point. Not that it's a very, very high bar. Both of them aren't, anything crazy, but Kingdra, yeah, unfortunately. Jigglypuff probably put in the good category. It is slow, not a fan of. Team comp is restrictive, but incredibly powerful, right? I mean, any team running Serena is powerful, and obviously Jigglypuff can take full advantage of running Serena, which is even more powerful. All right, moving on, we got Kamo, which I put in the close top. Like Yveltal, Kamo also has a low damage 4-gauge, damage dealer problem, which is slightly sad. But you could get some interesting comps with it, right? If you run Champion Iris, that's definitely something interesting, right? You can steal a whole turn off or of your sync move countdown, which is cool. And sync move is nice. The Omni boost is nice. All that. I think it's the only AoE dragon type, right? So that's cool. Zekrom probably put in the close top as well. Did get much better with Hilbert having a grid. Hilbert definitely helps out Zekrom's team a lot, right? Because the issue before was Zekrom's team just outside of Blastoise, just didn't have like a legitimate physical support for the team that was like as good, right? And now again, you do have Hilbert, which is fantastic for the team because Hilbert not only gives you obviously crit and physical attack, but also gives your team speed, which Zekrom lacks a lot in that category. Moving on, Pikachu. Pikachu put it in the iffy replacement level. It's just not that great as a electric type damage dealer. It could be like, it's a fun gimmicky electric type damage dealer with powers of 14 or whatever the heck it was, right? The potions are cool, but there's just so many better potion users at this point in the game. Beedrill's not very good, unfortunately. Sharpedo is still fantastic. It is not on the optimal rain team anymore, unfortunately. But outside of that, it's still a fantastic unit to run on dual striker teams just because of its absurd speed, right? And it is a decent suboptimal option for rain teams. Although you'd rarely run that. Moving on, Fraligator. Fraligator, probably put in the solid replacements are decent. A lot of people crap on Fraligator just because like there's so many better like water type units. But if we take that aside, Fraligator as a unit itself, it's not terrible, right? It's got a decent, you know what? It is decent. A decent sync nuke with Haymaker. Obviously, Mega Kick has a billion BP. Unfortunately, not that great physical attack stats, but it is a water type, so water types are busted because you could benefit from rain, right? Which just gives you so much free damage. Palkia, this is the interesting one. So, Palkia was the one that we had like unanimous agreement. Like a lot of these we debated like a lot, right? At times for like very, very long stretches. But Palkia was unanimously top tier, easily top tier. And some of you were thinking, what the heck? This is like a free unit, so it's not that good, right? No, it is that good. Palkia is on this list, the strikers, right? Obviously, you know, we can't really compare with like tech units, but in terms of like strikers, it's I think the third highest damage dealing striker in the whole game. It's just it does slightly less than red. Like the difference isn't even like, you know, so it isn't even like a big deal at all, right? It's basically red levels of damage, but water type, right? Unfortunately, not near Leon's level, but it's around May and Red's level of damage, which is very, very good. That's a lot of damage because you guys know how hard May and Red hit, right? And Palkia does that with Hydro Pump. Spatial Rent's terrible though. The Sync Move's not that great. But you know, overall fantastic. Other things that it does, right? Outside of just the big damage. But yeah, like it's this guy like got just like again just it's the best option in a rain team now, by the way. May, Blastoise and Palkia is the optimal rain team setup. It used to be Grimsley. Palkia kicked out Grimsley, unfortunately. Just like on the sheer amount of damage it does, and it has both healthy healing and refreshing rain. So like your trainer move, if you want to use it, right? Your trainer move basically has like no drawbacks, which is a fantastic trainer move, by the way. Max out your speed, which makes it so like you just don't have any gauge issues at all, right? And it's just pretty bonkers. Again, this like the stats at 20 out of 20 fixes a lot of things, right? Makes the HP fantastic, solid defenses, and makes it so that it's not like incredibly slow. Although again, with the speed buffs, you don't really care. And May being May with Racing Rain, I think it was 4 or something. Obviously, no issues there. And then like you got the heals on top of just doing bonkers damage. So yeah, this was pretty unanimous. Not a single person thought it was like at all a tier lower. So yeah, there you go. Moving on, Raichu, probably solid replacements are decent. Discharge damage is slightly underwhelming, but the Sync Nuke is nice. The speed is nice, right? You can run out double strikers if you want, so that's cool. Zipstrika, we could put it in the very good category. Obviously, fantastic Sync Nuke. as well, and a lot of damage on wild charge, and very, very fast, right? Sprite very, very fast, which is always nice to see. And you also get guaranteed crit on your sync nukes, which is also nice, on top of, heals, all that. Moline, I'd probably say probably one of the better Gridless Strikers. I mean, it's just in comparison, like these two tiers, it's just, like, these are just functional, and these are just completely dysfunctional. It's basically the difference. None of them are, like, great, right? So, what can you do? Tarantar, maybe? I don't know. It's kind of in between. I'd say I'll put it in the better Gridless Strikers, just because it's not as bad as any of these, but it's also not as good as, like, Moline or Quasar, though. But yeah, it's okay, I guess. Mudsdale is not great. Steven is still good, although there were talks of maybe, Steven's how great he is in Master Mode, which he is still good, right? But yeah, he still does everything that Steven does. The absolute king of Legendary Arena. Absolutely owns that game mode. And also, like, even in Master Mode, right, if you could, the weeks that have, like, increased chances for additional effects, you get, like, 100% flinch, which is pretty busted, right? Moving on. Whoops. That's my support tier list that I forgot to organize and put away. Solrock, probably put in the worst Gridless Strikers. Doesn't really do much. Unfortunately, has like 1 gauge and 2 gauge. All right, where's the 2 gauges? You know what? I think it's 2 gauge. Who cares? I think Loonton was the 1 gauge, 2 gauge. I think this is both 2 gauges. Anyways, I think it's like Zen Headbutt and Ancient Power, I want to say. Anyways, whatever. Volcarona is still top tier, right? Great, secondary striker that you could run. Pretty bonkers damage off the Hyper Beam, obviously. I mean, it's a Hyper Beam unit. What can you do, right? Moving on. Machamp. Probably the better Gridless Strikers. Doesn't need a lot of help, though. Speed is absolutely atrocious. But has an interesting fun kit. Rampardos is not good. Recoil unit that doesn't really help itself at all. Arbok, maybe in probably the better ones. It does have a functional kit, even though it's not great. But you could say that for everyone else in this tier. Conkeldurr is like Machamp, but like less damage. But you get Drain Punch, which is cool, I guess. Scolipede is definitely one of the more functional Gridless Strikers, right? It does have a pretty complete kit. Chandelure is almost there, right, in terms of a complete kit. Sylveon does absolutely nothing. Solgaleo, we could put in the iffier placement here. It's, Sunsteel Strike's an absolutely fantastic move. Although, for maximum damage, you would want to run Focus Blast. But then again, Steel Weak, you're going to run Sunsteel Strike. Fighting Weak's Focus Blast, right? It's nice, right? Great defensively as well. Lucario, put in a solid replacement here, I guess. Good option if you don't have Wally. Solid option if you don't have Wally. Mewtwo. I don't know, it's kind of between these two tiers. Maybe if your replacement level, I guess. Does have 2 type coverages, even though Shadow Ball Mewtwo is absolutely atrocious. It's just very, very fast, which is nice. Not extremely tanky. Bit of a glass cannon. But it is fast, which is, again, I do appreciate. It's just not really optimal on like any Psychic or Ghost team, unfortunately. It's like Reuniclus, but like not as tanky, but faster. All right. Pretty similar in terms of damage, though. As for Pinsir, it probably is now one of the worst Gridless Strikers. The big thing for Pinsir before is that it's a 1 gauge spammer that you could run as like a secondary striker, but there's just so many better secondary strikers in this game that like Pinsir's just not it anymore. Plus, you have to mega him for like the extra damage buffs, which, you know, what can you do, right? So, anyways, awesome with this one. I guess hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, just my and some of the folks' opinions, right? So let me see if I can remember everyone. I'll put it in the description box if I forget anyone. But again, shout outs to Spark, Runner, Dawnson. I think Ray was in there as well, right? And I think Joe, and Crash for going over this with me. Again, I disagree with a lot of these placements, but hey, again, I do appreciate the extra, the opinions, so it's not just me run amok here. So anyways, again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.